All right, everybody, welcome to the July Multnomah Neighborhood Association meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order.
It's still not good.
Still not good.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Sandra, can you just mute this mic for 1 sec? Okay, let me.
Thank you. Would you pass that over to me? Thank you.
What else?
I've got a napkin. I think we got everything.
Putting in it out. What about now? Is that better? Negative is breaking up. Is this any better? All right, let's try. Is there a way that we can turn this mic here on for Zoom, but not project into the speakers? Okay. Well, let me try to turn my mic on mute and see what happens. Check. That doesn't seem to be that bad. It's very close to giving back feedback. Will, can you hear us online? Check.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, we're gonna see
People,
how we do.
people on Zoom, we're having audio trouble, so please bear with us while we work it out.
Okay, regarding the Multnomah Safe Rest Village, the city has recently dissolved the community advisory committee that was called out in the Good Neighbor Agreement and has instead proposed an alternative approach to community engagement, of which this next hour will be the first reincarnation of this process. We have 6 guests with us tonight, representing the city: Brandy Westerman, Director of Humanitarian Operations. Brandy, do you mind raising your hand? Margie Sackett, Shelter Operations Manager, and Heather Romero, Policy and Partnership Coordinator. And representing the operator of the Multnomah Safe Rest Village Urban Alchemy, Jeffers Dickey, Direction of Operations, Damian Roos, Deputy Director of Operations, Eli Wooten, Multnomah Safe Rest Village Manager, and Denisha Ryan is joining us as Urban Alchemy as well. Thank you so much. After this quick introduction, we'll have the city present for 10 to 15 minutes to answer a number of questions that have been raised since the city has proposed to adjust the Sears Armory site use to a recovery model. After that presentation, we'll have a questions and answers portion, which will take us to about 8:10 p.m. I'm asking folks who are providing comments and questions for our guests to please limit your questions to 2 minutes each so we can hear from most people who would like to talk this evening. And I've got Sam Juro helping out with time, so you'll see some cards held up with time. I'd like to remind everyone that we are all neighbors. Please be civil with each other. I'd like to ask folks to not demonize people experiencing homelessness and people struggling with drug addiction and or mental health problems. I'd like this conversation tonight to focus on how the city is operating and managing their Sears Armory site. And finally, a little context on why we're here. In the spring of 2024, a good neighbor agreement was signed by the county, the MSRV operator, our previous M&A president in the city. In this agreement, under purpose, assumptions, and goals, there's a statement that reads, inherent in this agreement is the assumption that all neighbors, both inside and outside the SRV, have certain basic rights. These include all neighbors have the right to feel safe and welcome. All neighbors have the right to safe and quiet enjoyment of their properties and public spaces. I'd like to invite all neighbors in attendance this evening to stand up if you believe that you've been negatively impacted by the city's operation and management of the Sears Armory site. Thank you. And now this is going to be complicated. Hold on. Please stay up. Now, please sit down if you feel like you have the safe and quiet enjoyment of your property. Sit down if you feel like you have the safe and quiet enjoyment of your property. So this is one of the reasons that we are here today. Okay, everybody can sit down now. I'm hopeful that in the future, we look back tonight as the inflection point for when the city made meaningful changes to the operation and management of their Sears Armory site to bring positive outcomes for both the neighbors and their residents. And I'm going to turn the floor over to the city to present. And good luck with this mic.
Let's hope this works. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out. I know your time is precious, and we really appreciate you coming to spend some time with us. I want to, first of all, introduce myself and my team. My name is Brandy Westerman. I'm the Emergency Manager and Operations Director. I sit within Portland Solutions at the City of Portland, and I've been in this role since the fall of 2023. I recognize that there's a lot more history represented in this room with this site, and I just wanted to kind of give that context. I have with me our Shelter Operations Manager, Marty Sackett, and Heather Romero, who is our most recent addition to the team and brings a wealth of experience and connections specifically focused on recovery from substance use. Our intent tonight is, yes, to answer questions and have a dialogue with you, but we also want to share some information. And so we're going to start with some of that information sharing right now. Heather and I have some remarks that we'll share. I am sure that will spark additional questions, which we're happy to address. Just a little bit of level setting. We're not going to have all the answers, but we will share what we know at this point in time. So first off, our portfolio that is managed by the Shelter Services team includes 17 sites distributed across the city. We're a mighty team of 10 people. Those 17 sites are made up of 3 primary types of shelter. The first is the alternative shelter like we have for this community with the Multnomah Safe Rest Village. There are 6 of those sites that are active operations across the city. The second type is emergency overnight shelter. This is the front door. This is the type of shelter that anybody in need of event tonight can get. There will always be availability for our neighbors in need. Including if we get to a point where there's additional capacity, we have the directive from our mayor to open additional beds to make sure that an individual who wants a bed tonight and doesn't have one available will have one available in these emergency shelters. Those are lower service, lower barrier shelter models, but it is the front door, and they're intended to help prevent some of the trauma that people experience when they don't know what this is. The third is the day centers, and we support 2 day centers. One of them is in partnership with one of the really long-standing providers in our community, Join, that's out at 8 First and Halsey, open 7 days a week. They provide services to our homeless neighbors, housing navigation benefits, substance use recovery support, meals, showers, laundry, some of the basic necessities of life. And then the second is run by our partners at Urban Alchemy, run in Old Town. This is the first and only outdoor day space. There are care coordination services available. This site is open 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it provides that safe place for somebody to spend their time and access basic amenities. An individual can come and stay for an entire 16-hour day if they wish to, or they can come for a short period of time. So that's a little bit of context. I want to talk a little bit about our recovery continuum. And this is still in development, and I want to acknowledge that as well, that this is a growing process. So within overnight only emergency shelter, we have 2 locations that are specifically focused on recovery-oriented services. These are for individuals who want to come into a recovery environment or a more sober environment. That's a front door. There's some service navigation that's available. The site staff are able to help people kind of navigate to additional services in our community, but it's a very low barrier to entry for folks. Within the alternative shelter model, we've now for quite some time had something called a wellness village. This is essentially a village within a larger village. And this is for individuals who indicate their intent.
Excuse me. May I interrupt? The people on Zoom are having a hard time hearing. Can you move closer to the mic?
That wellness village. And we've had a lot of success with that. So I want to just kind of recognize Urban Alchemy in particular sees about 200 engagements every month of individuals engaging with a recovery service. So this is actually a very popular service that's being provided. However, we have also received quite a bit of feedback from participants and staff at these sites that it can be very challenging for an individual on a recovery journey to be in a space that is, well, they're with neighbors who have a similar objective, they're still surrounded by some folks who are in activities and have to be a very challenging pathway.
Extremely important meeting, people.
Primary driver
You couldn't get the sound to work.
Designate a village as a wellness village in its entirety. The Multnomah Safe Rest Village was selected for this for a variety of reasons. One reason is the facility itself. It offers spaces that will allow our partners, recovery partners that support recovery within our community to be directly on site and work with the participants.
Oh, Jesus. Of all the meetings to be
huge
screwed up.
benefit. We really only have 2 alternative shelter sites that have that capability. They've got buildings as well as the outdoor shelter units. So that's one of the main reasons. The other reason is simply in size. We've got 100 units. The other space that had a similar facility capability has 160 units. We thought that was a little too big to start with. So those are some of the reasons kind of driving the selection of Multnomah Safe Rest Village as the recovery village. Now I want to speak a little bit to the process and where we're at in the process of design and conversion, because we are still in the design process of what this will look like. So when Heather came on, this was the first project that was assigned to her, and she has taken it fully under her wing and has been working really hard networking within our community with a variety of health providers, behavioral health providers, recovery-oriented shelters. She's pulled together about 30 different experts from across our community who have a wealth of experience in substance use recovery. In order to inform the design that is based in best practice and brings the strongest partners that we have within our community into the same space. Our objective is that this is a place for people to come, to stabilize, to pursue their objectives, to build community, and ultimately to find stability and an exit to permanent housing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone over to Heather Romero, who will tell you a little bit more about some of the tangible things that we're incorporating into the design. Heather, do you want to come here so they can hear you on Zoom?
Hey y'all, thanks for slowing down with us. So I want to talk a little bit about the referral pathway. I think there was quite a few questions.
Excuse me, before you start, we're having a hard time hearing on Zoom.
And that's something we're very intentional about. We recognize that the pathway that is currently existing isn't really set up to bring in folks that are actively pursuing a lifestyle of recovery. And so we're really going to limit the referrals into this site to folks who have shown consistent engagement in the wellness sections at other SRVs, as well as folks who are already pursuing the pathway of recovery through detox, residential treatment, and consistent engagement with MAP providers. To further that, using the word access filtration, we're going to assure that everyone who is being referred, whether it's from a wellness section at an existing SRV or from a recovery provider in the community, they're taking an assessment before they come in that looks at what their history is, what they're already working on, what their barriers are, and really get to the meat of it so that we're bringing in folks who have the best possible chance at success in this environment. And if they aren't the right fit at this time, then we have places for them in a wellness section where they can build up to that. We're really thinking of this as kind of the last step in the continuum of the shelter services that the city offers. And then alongside that assessment, they will also be required to sign an engagement agreement. So there is going to be a very strict policy around the engagement requirements at this specific site. And if they are not adhering to those engagement requirements, then they will be tracked by their care coordinators and they will be navigated to a more appropriate level of care for their ability to engage at the time. Whether that's a step back into a community space or exited to overnight shelter, exited to residential treatment, detox, whatever that looks like, right? There's not a one size fits all for this process. We're really trying to meet the needs of a very wide array of humans and trying to make it as appropriate as possible, but also as safe and effective as possible for the folks that are actively pursuing that recovery on site. Yeah, so that's the referral process. What I've been working on, and Brandy alluded to a little bit, is really bringing together a huge continuum of robust service providers. We already have a mental health provider that's coming on site, and they will continue to do so. They have a huge team of clinicians that are formally educated in mental health treatment, and specifically in the treatment of severe and persistent mental illness, which I'm sure all of you know is a huge thing that we are dealing with the population that is coming off. And they also have the ability to follow these folks once they leave this space, so they can be their long-term care provider for mental health concerns and medication management, which is not something that has traditionally been offered in any of the mental health care providers that have had access to coming on site to shelter sites. They typically are only allowed to support folks while they're in shelter, and then they have to find a new provider once they leave. And so as soon as I heard that, I was like, yes, you're the one. We need to jump on this as soon as we can, and really do everything we can to ensure that these folks have access in this space. And they're coming about it with the right mentality. They want to shadow care coordinators, understand the process, what a day-to-day looks like, and really take the time to build rapport and trust with these humans that really don't trust us. And so I really appreciated their ideology behind doing the work that we need them to. We're actively in pursuit of a substance use disorder treatment provider to do on-site intensive outpatient treatment. The provider that I'm hoping to get, and I have meetings with literally this week, is the same provider that is doing this exact same work on site at Vibes. They have massive experience, they understand the demographic, they understand the model, and they are well suited to do this work in this space. And it sounds like from everything that I've had conversations with them about, that they are willing, it's just a matter of getting in front of the right person at the right time, to get that going. And I am consistent. Alongside the clinic work that will be on site, we'll have peer support, recovery center case management, recovery support groups, both facilitated by members of the care coordination team with Urban Alchemy who are in recovery, and community members that are active in 12-step recovery groups, like myself. Recovery centered activities, lots of different things. We all know that community is a huge supporter of folks healing. And so really putting a huge effort into ensuring that there are consistent activities on site that folks can engage in and feel a part of, and have some autonomy in doing that, right? Like really building the skill that it takes to interact with other people that are on site and off site and feel like they have some onus in this system and in this practice. And really build like positive social connection that they may be lacking from the time that they spent in encampments. Because that's a huge thing that people miss when they've been living in a community of other folks that are living in tents. They have a family that they've built. And so when they come into an SRV, that feeling of loneliness is overwhelming and overpowering. And it's really hard to break into any new version of family. And so we really want to give them that space. And on top of all of the recovery stuff, I am a huge advocate for anything creative. So bringing lots of creative opportunities on site. Multnomah Arts. Yes, I always want to call it something else. The Multnomah Arts Center has agreed to come on site. I also have several local artists that would like to come and volunteer their time and run groups. They are folks who are in recovery and are a really good example of what it can look like to be a creative person in the world, practicing recovery and earning an income from it. Employment readiness, we have partnerships with the Goodwill, and they have an amazing, super robust offering of education options, and they are already doing that on site at other places and are geared up to come and do that at MSRV. And they can even bring like an entire fleet of laptops on site to help folks do resume building and learn soft skills and really like support the understanding of transferable skills. Because that's something that folks that have been unhoused for an extended period of time really struggle with. They're like, I'm not good at anything. I have no work history, right? And so they really are great at like bringing up all the things that they have done to survive and turning that into marketable skills for themselves moving forward. And then financial literacy and other life skills alongside some fitness stuff, right? Because who doesn't love some yoga? Yoga, CrossFit. We have great recovery partners at the recovery gym who can bring all the equipment on site and facilitate those classes on a regular basis for folks so that they have a consistent option for physical engagement of their bodies and their minds. I think that's really it for me. Oh.
Okay, would you like to talk at all before we start Q&A and comments? Anybody from Urban Alchemy? You don't have to. Okay.
Not a thing. Hey, hi, my name's Jeff. I'm the Director of Operations for Urban Alchemy. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a bad habit with that. Let me just I don't know, I want to put this kind of in perspective. We came up to Portland just to help Portland, the city of Portland, solve some of its homeless issues and some of the problems they have on the streets. That's what we're here for. And we're in partnership with the city. There's a huge homeless issue here. There's mental health, there's addiction issues on the streets. And it's a testament to your city officials that they're trying to tackle these problems. And we are working tandem in coordination with them to help solve these issues. One of the biggest things that are happening in recent times now is that the money has got cut. There's a lot of funding issues, and so a lot of resources have dried up. The county has cut hundreds of shelter beds. The city has had to cut shelter beds. And so in response to that, the city has decided that we need to maximize or optimize our villages to move people through them as quickly as we can and into housing so that we can get as many people off the streets in a short period of time as we can. And that is the whole concept behind turning Multnomah Safe Rest Village into a recovery village, is to help people get over their mental health issues, to help people get over their addiction issues and move on as fast as we can do it. Because without these kind of systems in place, your streets are going to get worse. And I know everybody here has noticed there's a lot more people on the streets. There's a lot more issues. It's not because the village is failing. It's because there are more people on the streets, because there's less resources and there's less help for the folks that are struggling.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, I'm gonna have some members of the audience go. Mark Booth, I'm trapped over here. I'm gonna reach. Thank you so much.
Here?
Yeah, where are you taking to your seat?
I don't know who should. Is there a camera?
No, you know what? We've got a mic now, right in front of the speaker up there. So I think they're hearing online just fine. Huh? Oh. Okay. All right, Mark, you're up.
Okay. Heather, thank you for talking about the things on the inside. As you saw a few people stand up at the beginning, I'm kind of concerned about what's outside the fence. 4 years ago, the city stood up its emergency temporary 3-year Safe Rest Village experiment, parked against residences in what was previously a safe and pleasant community. While vocally against usurping the site's purpose as a West Side Emergency Management Center, the neighbors understood the growing homeless population needed solutions and provided reluctant support, given a promised solid good neighbor agreement. Neighbors almost immediately experienced the predicted problems associated with low barrier, open air encampments, amplified by poor siting, design, and operations. Problems grew with the expansion of the MSRV. Efforts to get problems resolved through the Community Advisory Committee and direct contact with Portland Solutions have been frustrating, to put it mildly. With 4 years of this experience, we know that at an 18% placement rate, the MSRV's flawed model has not been a success for participants. Participants who have obstacles to succeeding who have been referred in. We know that the cautions which were voiced by the subject matter experts through the M&A working groups research were grounded in reality and have been prophetic in the neighborhood. And we know that by codifying this facility in the zoning code, the city's use of temporary was meaningless. Affected neighbors' voices have grown in number, reaching out to the city, the neighborhood association, and other neighbors similarly impacted. Earlier this year, the Coalition for Safe, Clean, and Quiet Neighborhoods near SRVs gathered District 4 councilors, the mayor, and approximately 25 neighbors in an effort to elevate their concerns and experiences and propose realistic solutions. And in March, we sent a letter to each councilor and the mayor restating those concerns and solutions. This new experiment is definitely not one of our asks. That said, while neighbors are not happy and are justifiably skeptical of this untested facility type, we hope that the city will adjust course in several areas to help restore the neighborhood before this goes online. I'd like to just 5 items here. We'd like the city to provide a 24/7 security officer and proactive monitoring of the perimeter. There's all good reasons for each of these. We want the city to relocate perimeter pods that are against residential properties. We want the city to maintain a noise-free, drug-free, and camp-free perimeter. There has to be an enforceable good neighbor agreement. And we want to establish a permanent neighborhood oversight group of those with skin in the game to include nearby residents and businesses. Those are not all the asks, but they would be evidence of some accountability and goodwill from the city if they were to be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Jeremy? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming to present to us. My experience has been on the original Good Neighbor Agreement as a volunteer, and a interim member of the Community Advisory Council, a volunteer with Friends of Multnomah Safe Rest Village, and with Southwest Outreach. And so what I see through all of my experience with this is that everyone, including all of you, we share the value of accountability. And so my questions are, I'll try and keep this briefly, but, and this has to do with, you know, people who are staying in the village. It's for staff, it's for the neighbors around the village and the whole Multnomah neighborhood. So first one, thank you for all the information on the recovery program. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Association has evidence-based practices recommendations for recovery facilities after detox and IOP. This is a shelter, but it's going to be functioning more like recovery housing. So will the villagers have more significant participation in self-governance? How will that be implemented? And how will, you know, shared power be implemented? And then the next thing is how will the behavioral violations be better enforced? You know, if somebody does violate the behavioral issues, how does the city plan on preventing things from crossing over to the fence or, you know, from either direction, really? And then will there be better ADA facilities and sleeping units, or are we going to be moving folks with more disability acuity into a more accommodating site? Okay. And then also, how will community activities be promoted to encourage, like, will the city come to more neighborhood events? Will the villagers be encouraged to attend those events and supported in attending those events so that we can really start to build a bridge across and have everyone in this neighborhood feel welcome, like Stephen mentioned in the first, the rights listed in the original GNA. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for those questions, Jermaine. And I know that you've been out here kind of working on these issues for quite some time. I really appreciate those efforts. These are all really great questions. Some of them are things that we need to work through still in the design process, but I really appreciate this feedback. A couple of things that I can respond to at this point. I think the question about more significant participation in self-governance, I think, is a really key one. As folks are moving through that recovery journey and preparing for independent living and housing or other appropriate housing for them, I think that sense of autonomy and that sense of connection to community, ability to kind of shape the environment and the process and the programs that you're involved with is actually really, really critical. I don't yet know how that's going to work. And I think we need to have more conversations between the city and Urban Alchemy and the various recovery partners that will be coming on site to really think that through a bit more. I think there are some limitations and there are some sort of must-haves in terms of ways in which we need to manage the space and the opportunities in the shelter. And there's also a lot of opportunity, I think, to really kind of build up that engagement overall and that kind of expectation, but also just the environment and the culture of participating in decision-making that I think is really important. So thank you for raising that question. More to come on that, I think. In terms of like the behavioral violations and sort of how that gets managed, this is a different shelter type. It is going to require some different kinds of expectations of folks, and recovery journeys are not linear. And there will be times when folks falter, and we want to catch them. We don't want to give up on anybody. So I think that there's going to be some negotiation around that. It is, as Heather mentioned, there will be times when a person is not ready for that particular model. And in those cases, we'll work with them to find an alternative location to achieve shelter services and hopefully get back on that track. The ADA facilities, I think, frankly, alternative shelter doesn't work for everyone. It does require a level of mobility because the individual units are separate from the bathroom, from the kitchen. It requires that ability to kind of move between things. We have, and I think this might be part of what you're referencing, we have had a lot of issues with things being damaged and therefore going offline for periods of time while maintenance and repairs are being conducted, including in like the ADA bathrooms. I do expect a higher level of accountability with this village model for those types of behaviors. And then finally, the community activities and participation. I think this is where I get to kind of return the invitation on this one. I think I agree with you that participation in community, that connection, that sense of belonging is definitely something that we want to foster. And I think that that is kind of up to all of us to make those invitations, to extend the hand and try to build that connection and that sense that you're welcome and you belong. So thank you.
Okay, before I call on the next person, a couple housekeeping things. There is a bunch of bottled water on a table right here in the middle for anybody who is very hot and needing some hydration. Also, we will likely not be able to get everybody's questions answered today, but if you're online, please put your questions in the chat. And I believe there was cards at the front that folks could fill out, or they can fill them out on the way out. And we're going to compile more questions and have them answered, and then make sure that gets shared with everyone. Next, I'm going to call on Patrick, please.
Thank you. So my name is Pat Brunette. I'm a property owner on Capitol Highway for 19 years. And I must say that the arrival of the Safe Rest Village represents a sea change in our neighborhood. And we've been dealing with it for the past 4 years or so. And I have several questions, and you might want to jot them down. But my overall point is, what will be different about this new model compared to the status quo? We've been asking these questions and trying to address the issues around the Safe Rest Village for 4 years. We're still asking those questions. And frankly, you can understand why the adjacent neighbors and even neighbors like myself who don't live adjacent are somewhat skeptical of this rosy picture, frankly, that you're providing us. It's been a problematic operation so far. So you've outlined how you get into the recovery village. My question is, once admitted, what's the level of participation that you're going to demand? I won't say require, I say demand, in terms of maintaining sobriety, participation in recovery programs, counseling, case management, et cetera, efforts to obtain independent housing. And will these specific goals be shared with the city and the neighbors who are, frankly, paying for this operation? And I think the last number I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, Urban Alchemy had a contract with the city of $90 million. Maybe it was 50 million. That could be wrong. It could be 50 million, but I heard 90 million. Okay, with that amount of money comes some responsibility to communicate specific goals that are measurable and timely and publicly accessible so that we know if this experiment is working. My next question is, will methadone and Suboxone be distributed or used? And if so, well, is the city prepared to be compliant with a whole slew of regulations and requirements, starting with federal and the DEA certification, accreditation, state approval, requirements of the facility, staffing requirements, record keeping, and most importantly, diversion control, which for those that don't know the term means inappropriate misuse or theft of controlled substances by clients or staff. So, and the last point I'm going to make is I appreciate you using Bybee Lakes as a gold standard. I would strongly recommend getting Alan Evans, who runs Bybee Lakes Hope Center, involved because his program has been very successful over the years with multiple measurable outcomes and at a fraction of the cost, frankly, per client.
Thank you, Patrick.
Can I sit here? Will this work? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and address some of these. First off, I would like to say that I know Alan pretty well and have worked really closely with him for my entire time working in the behavioral health field. And I agree that his model is amazing and have modeled many of the components of this shelter after his because I know that it works. I've seen it work. And he's been really good at being flexible through the different funding changes throughout the time that he's been operating in order to accommodate the need and the funding and braiding that together in a way that works. And so we are very much utilizing his ideology, and he's not running it, but I've worked very, very closely with him. So it's kind of like he's running it. And then as far as the methadone and or Suboxone, other MAT treatments, absolutely aware that medication assisted treatment is MAT. That covers a slew of things that are both controlled substance and not. There's several options for medication assisted treatment that have no controlled substance in them. They are just a deterrent from use. They are a blocker in the brain that makes it so that if you use a substance that it is blocking, that it does not work. And we have several providers in the Portland metro area that are within federal regulation that have mobile units that can travel and meet folks where they're at to do the dosing of these medications and stay within compliance of all of the regulations and slew of documentation and all the things that go along with that level of treatment. We are by no means expecting Urban Alchemy staff, nor either of the behavioral health providers that we're contracting to be on site to do any of that, because it is a very heavy lift. And there are plenty of experts around that are well-trained to do it. And so that is what we will be leaning on for this site and what we are currently already leaning on for all of the other sites. It has been proven by SAMHSA, which was named already by one of your members, that medication assisted treatment is very effective in generating long-term recovery for folks, especially for folks who are long-term addicted to opiates, which is the population that we are currently dealing with. Fentanyl is a whole different beast. And as someone who has worked in the recovery field for as long as I have, and someone who was a prior user of opiates, like I am terrified at what the future of the landscape is going to look like if we don't do something about fentanyl. And this is my way of like doing something about fentanyl, is creating this space that can support folks to move away from this drug that is deadly and has a whole different hold on humans than anything we've ever seen in prior years. And so we're really having to adapt the way that we treat this disease because the drug itself is very different and the way that it attaches in the brain is very different. And so it is, like several of you have said, it's kind of an experiment because we don't have perfect best practice for this because it's still brand new in the grand scheme of treating things that we know how to treat. This is still a very new thing that we're all having to learn as we go and figure out how to effectively treat it the best way possible. I feel like there was more in there. Oh, yeah, participation expectations. So like I said, in my little spiel, they will sign an agreement when they get there. These agreements are going to be based on the assessment that they take, right? So there is not a one size fits all recovery pathway for people, because everyone has different physical abilities, mental acuity when they come in, different mental health conditions that they're struggling with. Expecting someone who's dealing with psychoses at the same time of trying to get over a substance use addiction is unrealistic for them to have the same level of engagement with as someone who has already dealt with their mental health concerns and just needs some substance use disorder treatment. So the levels of engagement will be person-centered and person-specific. But they will sign that agreement when they get there. And if they are not adhering to that agreement, then they will have, we haven't decided on the number of chances, but 3 seems to be pretty consistent. 3 strikes, you're out type of thing. Lack of engagement or return to use. Either one will be counted as the same thing in my mind. And everyone deserves a chance to try again, because like Brandy said, recovery is very often not linear. And we don't want to penalize someone for having a slip or having a life event that causes a mental health break. We want to, give them a hand up and give them option to engage more and provide the opportunity to do that engagement. And so they will be asked to step down into a lower barrier setting if those chances are not taken with grace. And it is on us and Urban Alchemy staff to maintain that and stay accountable to that process. And hopefully I'll be around long enough to make sure that happens.
Have you go after Mary? You're next, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi, I'm Mary Knox. I know some of you. I'm a longtime volunteer with Southwest Outreach. I've been a part of this neighborhood for about 40 years. And I served on the Community Advisory Committee for a year. And I really appreciate all of you being here. And I hope this is the first of many community conversations, because I think we really haven't had that. And mostly I want to say that I 100% support a fully functioning MSRV in this neighborhood. I'm proud to be part of a neighborhood that cares for their most vulnerable neighbors. I consider residents of the MSRV to be my neighbors. And it's just super important to me, and it's important to Southwest Outreach. I feel that I mostly support an MSRV that provides quality trauma-informed care that first does no harm and that fully respects the neighborhood they share space with. And my main questions then are around accountability, because I feel like I have been in a similar space before, hearing fabulous things. It's just, you talk about what's going to happen. It's like, we should all move in, I should do yoga, right? And I was there when Sunstone Way was there, and they had fabulous things to say about their wraparound services. And I was at the very first meeting with Urban Alchemy when they came to Rivers Gate, and I heard all the great things. On the other side, I work with a lot of people who have lived in the MSRV or are currently still there. And I served on the CIC. And mostly I didn't see that there was any walking of the talk. Honestly, I saw a lot of harm. I saw exits used as punishment and threats. I sat with people while they told me about harm, abuse, active drug dealing by staff, all the things that we all heard about with the coin, news. So my question, mostly to Portland Solutions, is what's going to be different this time in terms of accountability? Because we haven't seen any transparent, serious investigation of the allegations that came forward early in the year. And, you know, on the CAC and after the CAC, my time on the CAC, I talked with Portland Solutions and asked, you know, what's being done about all these people being exited to the street? What's going to be different this time? What's your plan for accountability for this $90 million contract?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you for the work that you do. I'm going to do my best to address that question. There's obviously some sensitive pieces to that as well. In terms of, so I think we do share the value of accountability, and any grievance must be investigated and taken seriously. And we deeply believe that. I will also say we've been building a plane as we've been flying it. And I want to just acknowledge that our systems are maturing over time. We're a team, and I believe Urban Alchemy is with us in this, that is really committed to ongoing continuous improvement. We were asked to do a lot of things very fast. And what that meant is our systems weren't as mature as they needed to be. At the same time, we have very regular communication about every grievance that is received. There's deep investigations. There's a lot of collaboration with law enforcement when it's necessary at those levels. Many of the grievances that we're hearing, some of the things that came through in the media, have not been substantiated. And I just want to kind of acknowledge that as well. In order to investigate a grievance, we need some details. We need to know when it happened. We need to know who was involved. And when we have sufficient information, then we do deeply investigate every single grievance. We will hold people accountable. And I will say that Urban Alchemy holds their staff accountable. And I can say that because we're talking to them every single day. And whenever a grievance arises that involves a staff member, they take it extremely seriously. And I'll let Jeff speak to that as well. But we've seen those actions be taken. Obviously, we can't talk about HR matters publicly, right? So there are some restrictions on how we can really represent that. We can represent it in data, and we're committed to providing more of that data publicly to share some of the information around the investigations that are happening, the grievances that are being received. We have a weekly meeting with the city ombudsman, who has been an organization within the city, completely independent. They report to a separate elected official, the city auditor, and they work with us every week to bring concerns. So that's an independent pathway for folks to be able to kind of raise concerns. We've also seen folks who trust Southwest outreach volunteers come to them with concerns, and we try to work on those as well and ensure that we're addressing those when they come to our attention. So I acknowledge that there's more work to be done in this space. We're maturing our processes and policies. We're implementing a stronger appeal system to ensure that individuals who are exited and feel that that was an unfair exit have a pathway to have their case directly reviewed by the city employees at shelter services. I do want to give Jeff the chance to respond as well, because I know this is a topic that they've been thinking about a lot as well.
Thank you, Brandy. How do I start? Let's see, up higher. Yeah, that's how we do it. As far as the allegations on KTU, Christina Giardinelli, she's never turned them over to me. She's never shared the details. She's never told me exactly what the allegations really entailed and who was involved. The ombudsman's office, who has the allegations, never shared them with me. I think our legal counsel has actually made an information request to the city to get that information. So as far as accountability, how am I going to be accountable for things that I never get, or information I'm never receiving? I'm being accused of all these things, but the information is not being shared with me. So with that said, we hold our staff accountable to the highest degree. If I receive a complaint against staff that anything has happened, whether it's true or false, they're immediately taken off the shift. The complaint is given over to our HR department and ER department, employee relations department, and they they start an investigation. Sometimes we hire outside agencies to do investigations just to distance ourselves so we have a result that's not biased. Once we get these investigations back, then we can come to the city and say, hey, this is what we found. This is what we've discovered about our staff. We either terminate or we'll bring them back on and put them back on shift depending on the outcome of the investigation. I have a member of my team that is fully devoted. That's all he does is answer the grievance processes, answer the grievance. He interacts with the city shelter staff and the ombudsman's office on a daily basis. We have shared spreadsheets just cataloging complaints that we go over and address. Yes. So we don't ask that they just come to our system. So with our messaging in our sites, that you don't have to come to us to file a grievance. We understand that if they feel that we're hostile towards them, they might not come to us. We tell them, go to the city, go to the ombudsman's office, and they'll bring the grievance. Tony Green, the ombudsman, files complaints on the behalf of residents all the time. Like every day we get a complaint from Tony Green for something because the resident's not filing the complaint. He is. So that's how we kind of address that hesitation, that reservation, or maybe even fear of retaliation that that our guests were feeling to address those grievances. What's that?
Lisa.
Okay, yeah.
Hi, my name's Lisa, and I have started a coalition with Mark and Patrick, who already spoke tonight. This is a group of about 40 neighbors that for 4 years now have been severely impacted by the site. Mark and I were on the community advisory committee with Mary. It's not that we have not tried every civic avenue available to us to get a remedy for all the issues. So I'm just going to say that. I also tonight invited Sharon Mirren. Sharon, would you stand up? I invited Mr. Zimmerman. He's here. Could you stand up? And I invited our most recent candidate for city council, Eli Arnold, to attend tonight in hopes that they might all have an opportunity to speak on their views of the Safe Rest Village and the safety component that we're not getting help with. So Jeff, maybe you can answer this question. We haven't had a love team for weeks. Why? Pardon me? It's not in your contract. Okay. Whose contract is it in?
I think everybody knows that there's been significant budget cuts this year across city and county for a variety of things. It's impacting pretty much every service. And we've had to make some very hard decisions, including the love team. So that has been significantly scaled back. We no longer have a love team that's dedicated to the Multnomah Safe Rest Village site. We are working with the Urban Alchemy folks to ensure that there are perimeter walks by staff on site, but we've had to make some reductions in those services.
What is the love team? Is a team of gentlemen that work for Urban Alchemy that walk the perimeter and serve as a deterrent and sort of a security might not be the right word, but they certainly serve as a deterrent. We have no perimeter security. We've been asking for it for 2 years since the expansion, and the answer is always, we don't have enough money. So maybe we have 80 participants at the Safe Rest Village and we have money for perimeter security. I don't see why that can't be solved after 2 years. Can you guys write that down on the list? Because that seems to be one of the solutions that the coalition came up with. The other problem we're having is you're talking, and we've spent a lot of time about inside the fence. What is happening offsite? Who is keeping these people? Like when you go into recovery, you don't want outside influence. That's where we're seeing all the problems. I see the drug dealers right by my mailbox. So who's deterring that? How are you going to solve that problem? And then the other thing, when we submitted this list of so many items, you didn't answer most of them. So I will resend it, and everyone on the coalition, all 40 plus of us, would like concrete answers to all these questions. I think that's fair. So is there anyone else in the neighborhood who is struggling as much as Megan and Monica and Matt and Abby watching fentanyl from their office? I mean, you guys really have no understanding of what we're dealing with down in the trenches. And I don't think anyone who lives 4 blocks away even understands. So how are we going to get help? Portland Solutions has not been helpful. So do we need to keep going up? Do we need to go to Commissioner Mirren? Do we need to go to Commissioner Zimmerman? How do we get perimeter security for our neighborhood? Can you answer that right now? You can answer that?
Lisa, I think there was a question in there. The question is, how do we get better city services to support the perimeter and to support the neighbors? If you have an answer, that's not no budget. If that is it, then
Unfortunately, it does come down to the budget question. It's also, I think, some of the things that we're hearing are a need for those additional services across the city, including support from PPB and others. And I think that what we're committed to doing is being responsive whenever there is an issue that arises, working with our partners at Urban Alchemy and the recovery partners to ensure that there is that kind of eyes on the perimeter, that when a participant within the program is causing disruption outside, that there is an accountability for that participant within the program. And those are the things that we can commit to.
Okay, so an analogy. So you guys know I'm a transportation nerd. That's how I got into this. When PBOT does a project, if they're going to do a project on Multnomah Boulevard, they're going to do pavement, they're going to do ADA ramps, they're going to do traffic lights, and they're going to do center lane lines and fog lines. But if PBOT doesn't have enough budget, they don't go out there and build the road and don't put in stop signs or stoplights. That's a danger to the community. I'm not sure if that's the exact right example here, but it does seem like if the city's going to go and use a certain site and they need X to make it work, but they only have 0.8X, to me, that doesn't make any sense. All right, I'm gonna have Sharon Marin go next.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I love that comment. I was thinking that this whole time. So I'm Sharon Myron. I had been your Multnomah County Commissioner. I'm not. I'm just a neighbor and live in Hillsdale. But I do, seems like actually, and I am running for Multnomah County Chair, just to say it, because someone needs to fix these problems who will actually do it. And so I've heard a consistent theme here about accountability. And as a commissioner, I saw a lack of accountability to the neighbors who reached out to me when I tried to find out about what we could do at the city, what was happening at the county, what we could do at the city, what was happening. There was nothing. We would just get the rosy pictures or we can't do anything. And it was all the same, whether you're a commissioner, whether you are a resident, and nothing changed. I also am a volunteer with Portland Street Medicine, and I would provide care to people living in the camps. And Mary, I just am so grateful for what you said, because I repeatedly heard exactly what you heard from so many people I cared for there, who were telling the same stories of threatening with being exited, a lot of harm that was being caused, and it's not everyone, but it is happening. And so there is no accountability inside to residents, outside to the people. And the question I did not hear answered that I heard asked many times was, what is supposed to be different now compared to the past several years when nothing has changed and in fact things have only gotten worse?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I also see that there's another hand up. I just want to kind of come back to that commitment to continuous improvement. I know that it feels unsatisfactory because it's not that we're going to come with a whole different set of resources to be able to address those issues. I don't have those resources right now, but what we do have is a voice within the city, the ability to work alongside the other bureaus and coordinate problem solving together with each of you. And that's got to be a continuous process. It's got to be open dialogue and communication. And I appreciate the willingness on the part of every individual here to come and bring these very serious concerns to our attention, to talk with us about it. They're not easy answers, and I don't want to pretend that they're easy answers, but we are committed to working with you to find the best path forward and to ensure the success for neighbors both inside and outside of the village.
Next, we're gonna have Councilor Zimmerman. Okay, sure. Eli, you're up. 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Eli Arnold. I'm running for City Council in District 4. I actually worked as a police officer the last 9 years directly every day dealing with homelessness and addiction issues. It's really important that we get this whole process right. I think a big part of the frustration around this, and my frustration has been, about standards, right? That we've had a reluctance to expect things of people and to sort of hold, people to a certain level of accountability. I think a lot of times we have viewed it as like mean or cruel. But anybody who's raised a kid understands that like having standards and expectations is actually really important for people and their well-being. And, I know I would feel the same frustration if I was going through what you guys were going through in my neighborhood. And it's got to be really tough, sort of bearing an uneven burden for the city's struggles. And, you deserve to be happy and well in your neighborhood just as much as people who are struggling with addiction, deserve assistance to sort of regain their autonomy and free will. And so I actually really like the idea of specializing our shelter services a little more. I think there's some benefits that we could gain from that. The devil, of course, will be in the details. Are we holding people to standards? Are we seeing meaningful results? And so I really appreciate the invite out here tonight and the chance to talk to you. And, I hope we as a city can do better for all of you and for the people inside the tiny home village. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Marlene?
Good evening, Marlene Howell. I work with Southwest Outreach, and I just wanted to mention a few things. I'm wondering in the design of the new village, how are residents involved in creating that design? The whole process of nothing about us without us is really critical. And I think people in the process of trying to recover have a lot to offer, as you well know. And we don't want to do this as much for people as we want to do it with people. And I'm worried about when you talk about exiting, will anybody be exited into houselessness? Because we have seen that repeatedly at Southwest Outreach. People get exited, they start camping in the neighborhood, the camp gets swept, and then what happens? Southwest Outreach shows up and tries to help people pick up the pieces of their multi-layered traumas. And then we wonder why people don't get any better. Of course, the ombudsman can't really talk to you. It's a private process. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Once a complaint has been made, the ombudsman has to investigate it. So what I'm wondering about is if the ombudsman office ends up finding that any of the allegations had merit, what will happen then to the contract with Urban Alchemy, given that the city decided not to minimize how long it would last? So look, that's, I think, an important thing. Also, I just want to mention that just in general, all of these elected officials are running for either election or re-election. And I think it's real questionable that a few showed up, and if not, everybody was invited. So I just think in a process, you shouldn't have a few people who get to stand up and say, I'm running for re-election or I'm running for election. So, okay, I'm glad to know that because it was just a little worrisome to me. So just something to think about in the future. But I appreciate Village Grace holding this space for us tonight, and I appreciate Shelter Services for showing up. I know you are trying your best, and Urban Alchemy, I know you want to do the right thing. And I'm just asking you, please do the right thing, because when you don't, we often have to end up helping people pick up the pieces. And it's really ugly and traumatizing. And then we wonder why people don't succeed. But I think everyone in the room wants things to be better. I don't have any question about that at all. And I think everybody in the room has the capacity to help make things better, especially for those who are most vulnerable and those who are most hurting. I don't see anybody in here who is just wanting to make things worse for any other human being. So I like to look at that capacity. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Abby or us. Thank you, Abby.
I'll stand over here selfishly by the fan. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for all the information that was provided today. And it's awesome to see so many neighbors out here. I wish I've met more of you so far, and I wish it was under different circumstances. But nonetheless, we're stronger together. And I think that I mean that in the sense that we're stronger together, not in a divisive way. It's not an us versus them. Matt and I have had our own personal experiences with guests of the MSRV, and we just want to recognize that we're here today, and we would love that every person who's unhoused in Portland to get off the streets into permanent housing. We ourselves both actually have experienced our mothers being severely addicted to alcohol, and they're both in recovery actively. They're recovering alcoholics to this day. And I want to recognize, thank you. It's not an easy process. It's not quick. It's not a get them in, get them out. And so I have a lot of respect for the folks who work with those individuals every day. Moreover, I think everyone wants people experiencing homelessness and mental health crises to find safety and stability in permanent housing. The question isn't whether we should help, it's how. How we can help while also protecting the surrounding neighborhood. And I don't doubt that that's the intention, but I strongly believe everyone here that's come today with sharing their experience of the struggles that they've had. And our ask is please involve us more while you're doing this process. Involve us in everything that has to do with anything you can implement us in. And I want to end, because I know I'll keep it short. Safety and security is not an afterthought, and it shouldn't be treated that way by Portland. When you make a car and when you build a house, safety and security are not afterthoughts. And we really don't want that to be the case here, and we don't deserve it either. So thank you. Really appreciate your efforts.
Got one right here. Thank you, Robin.
I'm Robin, and I'm responsible for Friends of the Multnomah Safe Rest Village, a group that supports keeping the Multnomah Safe Rest Village and trying to make it better. And I want to just reiterate something that Mary said that I suspect most of us in here can agree on, and that is this. I want to support a Multnomah Safe Rest Village that provides quality, trauma-informed care for our most vulnerable neighbors first does no harm and fully respects the neighborhood they share space with. I think we can agree on that. I know many of you would like to see it disappear. There are also many, many neighbors who are proud to have it here and would like to see it stay and believe it needs to be improved.
We got a counselor here with us.
I'll set this down. Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Zimmerman. I'm one of your city councilors, so appreciate you showing up. It's a hot room, a tough topic. Thank you to the city staff and others who showed up. You know, we spent 2 hours together, your neighborhood president and I last night, kind of talking about this meeting, kind of what was coming. I've walked the neighborhood. I've been in some of your homes who look directly into the camp. And I appreciate you kind of opening up, showing us their struggles, because that's not lost on us. And it was really helpful to show the mayor the thing that we've been talking about for so long. There's learning and experience that I think really helped. The problem is, I think too many of those lessons that when we left that neighborhood walk, in terms of, because I put them all in the category of fairly small improvements that I think would have gotten to the point of be able to keep the village open, but making it better for those that are surrounding. And too many of those that were small items, I think, have foregone and gotten forgotten, or they weren't prioritized. I don't know if that was lip service on that day and that evening. I don't know if that was lost in the budget talk. My own interactions as your city councilor, I've tried to get some lighting changes. I told the mayor, I was like, look, when you're talking about a $50 million program, $100,000 worth of trees and vegetation between a pod and a home is not a very big expense. Now, I can't spend $100,000 on trees and vegetation to create a barrier, but a city who is, if you really want to keep a program open, and I think the city does, I think the mayor does, then everything is on the table. And that's the perspective I've tried to share with them. And I just want to, here's the perspective I'm working from as your city councilor. I was at City Hall when the first task site was open at Clinton Triangle. Clinton Triangle is a different site. It's not as close to residential, but the lessons and Sharon Myron and I have known each other 11 years at this point. We've done this. The closer you are to residential, the more services and the wraparound services that have to happen and occur so that the impact into the neighborhood is minimal. And I've learned one thing that is consistent in every neighborhood in Portland is that Portlanders are quite generous, that if a thing happens, we understand that. Where our frustration starts is when we call to say this thing happened and then nothing happens to fix it. So in the very first task site that we opened, we set up with the Brooklyn neighborhood and Hosford Abernathy a mechanism for response. That's where the patrols came from, that I guess we call Love Patrol over here. That's where that idea came from, and is that we want a rapid response to a situation, because the idea was we don't want the very problematic, but in the grand scheme of things, they're small, to be the thing that deters from the overall. And I think that we generally get that. But when Brandy and others are going through this budget cuts, this is where we continue to have to tell the mayor, and Sharon gets this too, is that there's one thing that the legislative branch, that's Mitch and Olivia and I, can do. And there's another that the executive branch does in terms of how they run this and what they actually listen to. And our influence here is our main power versus actual authority to say this is how things are going to run. So I try to share these messages with the mayor of like, look, this shelter is directly neighbors, I think 6 feet from our closest house. We've got to put in or rearrange the internal site in a way that makes sense. We've really fallen on some deaf ears with that. That's been really challenging. I hear that. But the movement too, and I checked my email as I was sitting back there, because I remember emailing the neighborhood association on May 12th when the mayor announced that this was going to go to and he used the term recovery shelter. That means something a lot to me, because I have people in my own life who frankly have been residents at Reedway, who that was difficult, right? A lot of us have gone through a period of time where somebody kind of
is no longer in our family or our friend group because it got that bad in their addictions. And they're real mad at us, and we maybe intervened, and they got but his story was that he found success at Reedway. We don't have a relationship anymore, but I do know that he is living healthily somewhere else in the Portland metro area, back on the wagon after falling off for 5 years. And I see that. But one thing that has, from the early days of the task sites, that I am recognizing is I have met a few residents over the time who are, look, Eric, I like the small village thing. Urban Alchemy or Sunstone, I don't really give a damn. That was fine. But I cannot be in these pods next to people who are using because I'm already clean or I'm already sober, and having my next door neighbor or 5 of my next door neighbors be using, I have to leave. So from a shelter creation standpoint, I really care about that because I don't want somebody to come to a shelter and make the choice that the street is a better option than a shelter. So what does that mean for Multnomah Rest Village? Some of the things that Stefan and I are talking about is like, and you guys, I live in the neighborhood, so I go by it every day. The minivan that sits at the apartments just down the way and where I know that they're just doing business, that has to be attacked by the police bureau. It absolutely has to be intervened because what that is an exploitative action by other people who right now, there's a clientele. Task sites in some sense were set up for getting off the streets, but there was an acknowledgement that there was other types of behavior that we weren't going to address. But if we're going to go to a clean and a sober type of situation and a living situation, our expectation as a neighborhood and to the mayor should be real fierce on if we see a van who is selling whatever to people, we've got to attack that situation because that is exploitative for people who are living clean and sober. That matters for our neighborhood because that is the ripple effect in the neighborhood. So those are the types of things that as I'm listening, that's why I want to go toward the end because I wanted to hear the questions and the concerns and the working with the neighborhood because I agree that there are a lot of folks in here who see a place where this can exist, but in its current trajectory, I think both camps, both groups of people are finding like we're onto a different path because we're not hearing what is the vision for the surrounding services from the city, from the police bureau, from the mayor, from PBOT, from lighting, from vegetation, all those types of things. So I'm getting the wrap up. My point in being here is that your lists have been good. Your lists have been good. Our meetings about how and the expectation of folks inside and what they go through is important. And the duty I'm really looking for as well is trying to make sure that where these shelters go, when they're in our neighborhoods, that their impact on the neighborhood is not so damn bad that the next neighborhood will fight like mad before something opens up. Because the mayor's point here, and I agree with it, is that sleeping outside is the most dangerous thing you can do in the city of Portland, and that should not be anybody's goal. And so a shelter capacity is important. That we cannot achieve that if the ones that are open fail the neighborhood in which they're the neighbors with. So your lists have been helpful. Your advocacy has been helpful. I hear you. Olivia and Mitch and I talked about this often. We were all on that walk. Thanks for setting this up. And I didn't know I was speaking tonight. I was coming to listen, but you are heard. All the different perspectives are quite heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to wrap up real soon. We've got a very patient hand in the very, very back. Do you want to ask a quick question? Yeah. Yeah. Question. We're gonna wrap up in like 3-5 minutes.
I'll try to keep it really quick. My name is Matt, and we've been focused a lot on just the interactions right around the community. I'm curious more about the change in the community. I got interested in the Safe Rest Village just from noticing, I don't know, in the past year and a half, just a lot more unsheltered homelessness in the neighborhood. And he had a good comment about homelessness increasing. But I think that was a little bit, well, there's a lot coming straight from the Safe Rest Village as well. Trying to dig through all the reports, it looks like maybe the Safe Rest Village serves like 250 people a year. I noticed that probably over half of those people go back into homelessness. Couldn't get the exact number. I'm assuming you're not driving most of them to elsewhere in town, so they're probably moving right into the neighborhood. I'm curious if that's the case, if you have a sense of like what percentage of people that you serve in the community are going back into the neighborhood. And then secondly, if that's going to change with this new model. I heard a comment about you're going to offer services elsewhere. But if someone just wants to exit, or, you know, like the good neighbor agreement says someone's going to be exited if they're caught doing something like dealing drugs, what does that look like? Are they moving back to the neighborhood, or what happens from there?
So a couple things on the data piece. We should be sharing some data very soon for this past fiscal year. The preview of that, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the preview is we've seen a significant increase in folks going to permanent and or temporary housing options. And there's still a lot of people who do return to homelessness before they're able to kind of get the service that helps them resolve that homelessness. In terms of when somebody is exited for whatever reason, whether it's by choice or it's because of a behavioral issue or they're coming to the end of their stay, they're always offered an alternative shelter option and transportation support. So those are options, and we can't compel anybody to take those. And so I also recognize that sometimes folks do come back into the community. And that's where we'll continue to respond through the impact reduction program to any sort of camping reports. And that's kind of what we can offer right now.
All right, thank you. Come on, well, the person with the hat, sorry. And then I'm gonna take you, and then we're gonna wrap up. Okay.
Sure, I'll just make this really quick. My name is Matt. I live nearby. Question is, what is the internal governing structure of the Safe Rest Village? That is, do the residents fill governing roles themselves? And can they be expected to preserve the integrity of their community and protect their environment against behavior that is non-conducive to their recovery programs? I know of one local self-governing community that is actually being subverted by their own self-elected officers who are using their positions to protect their drug habits and exclude those who call them out on it.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I think it sort of is similar to what we talked about with Sharmeen's question. I think we need to explore that. Right now, there's not a self-governance model in place at the Multnomah Safe Rest Village. I think what we want to look at is how to build more opportunities to participate in decision-making for folks who are participants within the village.
Thank you. And then our final question tonight. Yeah, I'll repeat your question for everybody online.
I'm very interested in a couple questions, and that is, can you tell me the residents of this new program are all going to be in recovery? Is that correct? So that is, to me, the answer to how is this going to be different? Because everyone there will have the same goal. And if they don't meet that goal, then you're going to find a better place for them. Is that not correct? So the reason I wanted to...
For those online, there's a lot of nodding heads.
there is a huge positive reinforcement by community for people that are in recovery. And the reason I can tell you this is because I ran a recovery program through Washington County Drug Court for many, many years. And it was very successful because the people within our business signed a contract to support these people, to make sure there was no drugs in the facility, that no one was, and that they were committed to helping these people, helping them find housing, helping them find food, bringing them food, clothing. It took the whole community of my business, which was fairly large, to make this happen. So the community has got to support it. That's all there is to it. Absolutely have to.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much to our guests from the City of Portland and Urban Alchemy for joining us tonight. I thought it was very informative. I do know that there's going to be a conversation with us about what this engagement's going to look like in the future, because we can't use our whole monthly meeting every month on it. But, and I'll be soliciting feedback from a number of different folks who I know will have opinions on this and want to participate. So thank you very much. And thanks everybody for coming. Okay. Great question. What's being asked is a number of the questions that were submitted without a lot of time for getting answers ready, and likely other questions that were put on cards. And if anybody's placed a question online, what's the time frame for getting answers back on those? Is that maybe you guys emailing me and I can distribute, or?
Yeah, we can definitely distribute those through Stefan. So depending on when we get those, I think we would probably need up to a couple weeks, depending on the number of questions. If it's a few, we can turn them around quicker. If it's a pretty long list, it might take a little longer, but I think certainly within a couple weeks.
Okay. Abby, do you want to shout something real quick? Yeah, the question is, what's the best way to stay involved or stay in tune with everything?
Yeah, I love that. I think, so we're going to have some conversations about the future of this dialogue. I would like to continue having a dialogue with the community and having these open pathways. In between these types of kind of more formal engagements, you can always reach out to us at shelterservices@portlandoregon.gov. That email inbox is monitored regularly, and we do get back to folks. So please don't hesitate to do that at any point in time, and then we'll work alongside Stephen to think through what the next kind of iteration of this type of conversation would look like. But yes, please, additional suggestions, questions, concerns, please do reach out to us.
All right, thank you. And then last but not least, I need to thank a few folks who were here since 4 o'clock today, getting everything set up. Thank you so much. This is great. Really appreciate a lot of hard work from a lot of volunteers, some who are also online right now, put in a lot of time to try to get this well organized. So thank you all very much. Thank you. Have a great evening. Meeting's adjourned.